What's up, everybody? It's your girl, The Sin Show, and yes, I am back with another episode. Ho, let's talk about it, baby. Mozambique is on fire. The streets, they on fire. Everything is on fire. Why? Okay, let's talk about it. This is coming after a long ruling party's win in a very much disputed election. Okay, back on Monday, violent protests started to erupt in Mozambique after the top court confirmed that the ruling party, Frelimo's victory, that had happened back in October, they had a little thing called an election. Okay. Now, the gag is, according to their civil society monitoring group that's called Plataforma Decide, they are now at least saying, but I do believe it's a lot more, them numbers is definitely higher, but they were saying there's at least 130 people who have been killed in clashes with the police. You know, that number is already increased. Okay. Now, this is the thing about this is that this actually comes after the top court had said that there had been some irregularities in that election and that it did not substantially influence the results. Okay. And that was with that time, that Daniel Chapo, who was the governing party at the time, which in that case, he was with Frelimo at the time. And they won with 65.17% of the vote. Now, it doesn't sound like to me that this man is like too much because, I mean, hey, then there wouldn't be all this civil unrest. Feel me? So what we are going to do is watch some video compilations of some TikToks that I put together along with some YouTube video content that is covering this whole situation. And like I said, we've got how many more days left? And it's not to say that this will really end, but let's see why. How did this happen? Why is this happening? And if you happen to know anybody, and hopefully you've gotten contact with them, where are they going now? Because it seems like you've got some people who are really trying to exit stage left. You know what I mean? So let's have a conversation about it. I'll see you guys in at the end of the video or in another video. Peace.
I was wondering about our yesterdays and digging through the rubble. And to say the least, somebody went to a hell of a lot of trouble to make sure that when we looked things up, we wouldn't fare too well. And we would come up with totally unreliable pictures of ourselves. But I've compiled what few facts I could, such as they are, to see if we could find out a little bit of something. And this is what I got so far. First, white folks discovered Africa. They claimed it fair and square. Cecil Rhodes couldn't have been robbing nobody because, hell, there wasn't nobody there. And white folks brought all the civilization because there wasn't none around. How could the folks be civilized when wasn't nobody writing nothing down? And just to prove all of their suspicions, well, didn't take too long. They found out that there were whole tribes of people in plain sight running around with no clothes on. That's right. The men, the women, the young, and the old righteous folks covered their eyes. And no time was spent considering the environment. Hell no, this just wasn't civilized. And another piece of information they had, or at least this is what we were taught, is that unlike the civilized people of Europe, these tribal units actually fought. And yes, there was some crude implements, and yes, there was primitive art, and yes, they were masters of hunting and fishing, and courtesy came from the heart. And yes, there was love and medicine, religion, intertribal communication by drum, but no paper, no pencils, and no other utensils, and hell, these folks never even heard of a gun. And this is why the colonies came, to stabilize the land. Because the dark continent had copper and gold, the smugglers had themselves. They would discover all the places with promise. You didn't need no titles and deeds. Then they would appoint people to make everything legal, to sanction the trickery and greed. And back in the day, when the natives got restless, they would call it guerrilla attack. And they would never describe that the folks finally got wise and decided that they would fight back. And still, we are victims of word games. Semantics is always a bitch. Places once referred to as underdeveloped are now called mineral rich. And the game goes on eternally. Unity kept just beyond reach. Egypt and Libya used to be in Africa. They've now been moved to the Middle East. There are examples galore, I assure you. But if interpreting were left up to me, I'd be sure every time folks knew this version wasn't mine, which is why it is called his story.
Bem mesmo. Éramos explosivos. Mas não, mano. Desculpe. Tá vendo ali onde tá saindo ainda? É melhor, porque lá frente tá vendo. Aí. Ô, Joe! Abre vidro.
This province in the north of Mozambique, Cabo, is currently facing something very similar to what's happening in Gaza, in Israel. Cabo is very rich in gas. It also has ivory, it has coal, it has titanium, to name a few. Over 1.3 million citizens have been displaced. Billions were invested in Mozambique after this discovery in 2010. And then Wabasangena American companies, the French company Total, and another company from Italy, the three of them, they go in, they're in Pemba, quickly, now there are unrest within the region. Guys, ever notice how each and every region in Africa that has natural resources where the Westerners are interested in, there's always an unrest, number one. There's always these terrorist groups, secondly, and they're always children-led. Who's funding them? Who's funding them? Because in Mozambique right now, they call the Al-Shabaabs. But in Somalia, they also are Al-Shabaab. I mean, you can't tell me that it's one organization that is moving all across down Africa. Even in Nigeria, there's a similar a group, and they're even calling it ISIS at this point. But who's funding them? And why is it that it's the same recipe every single time? Clearly, there's a natural gas that is found, they come in, and then there are these unrests, and then they bring in the aid as well. There's no way one of the poorest provinces in Mozambique, out of the blue, now can finance an entire terrorist army. Do you understand? Where do they get the muscle from? Where do they get all of these resources from? But fast forward now, because there's such an unrest, the EU is the one that is now funding Rwanda to come and bring troops to Mozambique to come and try and salvage whatever is happening there. Icon. And again, this is the same thing that happens in Somalia. It's the same thing that's happening with the M23 in Congo. It's the same thing that is happening in Mali. Everywhere you go where there are natural resources and the West is interested in those natural resources, best believe me, and the recipe is one. I think that's why I am so taken aback, and I want to emphasize on the fact that we are experiencing a similar thing that is created by the same people to do the same thing to all of us. Like I said before, it's happening in Israel, it's happening in Mozambique, and it's not spoken about. Rwanda, for such a small country with such a small population in comparison to Congo and Mozambique, is quite busy. I think we should keep an eye on Rwanda because something's got to give. Something's got to give, and they keep collecting from IMF. They keep collecting from the EU. They keep collecting from Africa.
International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola will today lead a South African delegation during a bilateral engagement with Mozambique. The talks, we're told, are aimed at finding solutions to challenges in Maputo. Let's bring in SABC News reporter Kailihle Khumalo, who's tracking developments for us from Malelane in Mpumalanga. And Kailihle, the last time you and I spoke, we weren't really clear around what is taking place behind closed doors. Has that information come to light?
Well, certainly, and quite a very important meeting here for the South African delegation alongside their Mozambican counterparts. We're just supposed to be joined by the minister spokesperson, but of course, this is a very busy period here. It's just dashed off, but a very important one for the two countries. And as you know, that South Africa and Mozambique, really, these are strong allies. They collaborate in so many aspects, whether you're looking at the current situation in Cabo Delgado, for example, where there was a rise of insurgency. South Africa was one of the troops contributing countries in terms of making sure that there's permanent peace here. So with this current situation, this is unfolding in Mozambique as well. This is one of the initiatives by the South African government, especially given the very importance of this country that is a neighbor of South Africa, one of the top trading partners of South Africa. But also, most importantly, we do understand, that, of course, Mozambican Foreign Affairs Minister was supposed to be here, but she's not here. She's right in America. As you know, that this is a very critical time in the diplomatic calendar. As you know, that Mozambique is a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. So she's not here. We do understand Mozambique's interior minister is representing the country's delegation that is here. But I've seen quite a number of ministers here and representing a number of portfolios from transport, where Baba Chris is here representing South Africa. As you know, that where we are positioned, we're about 34 kilometers away from Lebombo port of entry between South Africa and Mozambique. So we've seen every so often the disruption in terms of the protest that we've seen erupting in Mozambique. So quite a very important time, but we do understand that it's around midday that there will be a joint media briefing where the ministers will have an opportunity to engage with the media, especially now, we know that really there's quite a lot at stake as everybody is really anticipating for that announcement by the Constitutional Council on the 23rd of December. And we do understand, for example, that one of the ringleaders of the demonstration that we've seen in Mozambique, Mr. Venancio Mondlane, has been saying it's going to be a very important time when that pronouncement is made around the validity of the results in terms of the results itself. But in the main, really just saying it's really going to mark peace or chaos for Mozambique. So they talk about electoral justice. And for South Africa, this is quite important, really, to have this particular intervention.
All right, Kylie Tlukumalo, we'll see how the rest of the morning into the afternoon unfolds. I anticipate a whole lot more information set to come to light during that briefing at midday. Kylie Tlukumalo, live to us there from Malelane in Mpumalanga. Thanks very much indeed.
Mozambique is bracing for more protests as the country's top constitutional body prepares to validate its disputed election. The Southeast African nation has been rocked by an unprecedented wave of violence since October's vote, leading to at least 130 deaths. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Odiro Ganga. And Odiro, if the Constitutional Council do actually validate the election results, how is that likely to be taken by the public, who, of course, have been demonstrating for the last couple of months now?
Jumana, we've been hearing speculation from local media that actually they're expecting the Constitutional Court to validate these results that saw the ruling party win by a majority. We had the candidate Daniel Chapo win the presidential vote by 70%, and then opposition leader Venancio Mondlane only win 20% of the vote and only getting 31 of the 250 parliamentary seats. He did not like these results. He contested in the Constitutional Council, citing election fraud. And leading up to these results, like you asked, tension has been rising in the country. You had Mondlane through Facebook Live saying that the Constitutional Council's decision will either lead Mozambique back to peace or plunge the country into chaos. He's announced the next phase of the protest, which is calling Turbo V8, and this is expected to continue putting social, political, and economic pressure on this government. As this tension continues to rise, we're also seeing civil society calling for truce and negotiations between both sides, but the incoming president, Daniel Chapo, is yet to be sworn in. So he has no constitutional mandate to negotiate or cut a deal with Mondlane. And on the other hand, the outgoing president, Filipe Nyusi, has completely and successfully completed his two presidential terms. Hence, he has no incentive to cut a deal and negotiate. He had a 1-hour call with Mondlane, but Mondlane maintains that the basis for any conversation is for electoral truth to be revealed, which is a non-starter for any conversation.
Yeah, and of course, while all these demonstrations were taking place, the country has sort of come to a standstill. I've seen many analysts downgrade their forecast for Mozambique growth for next year. How likely is it that we see a turnaround in the coming months, or is the outlook still pretty dim based on the political backdrop that we've seen in the last couple of months?
Jumana, we are not likely to see a turnaround in this quarter or the next quarter because several sectors are taking a hit. Take tourism, for example. This is supposed to be their biggest season. They're expecting tourists to be coming in, flocking the Mozambican beaches, enjoying their Christmas, but hotels are operating under capacity with little to no confirmations. So lodges, hotels, and adjacent industries that depend on tourism are likely to take a hit. You also look at the $20 billion natural gas project with Total. It's likely to face further delays. And this is a project that was expected to increase the country's foreign exchange earning, create employment, and grow the economy. Now, delays put at risk Mozambique's debt servicing. And the president has also come out and says civil servants' salaries are likely to delay due to a drop in revenue collection. You're also having the Business Association Council saying that losses will amount to about $400 million. And Standard Bank, like you mentioned in your question, they've downgraded their outlook and forecast to about 2.5% from last year's growth focus of 5%. And they're saying they're expecting a contraction in the fourth quarter and the first quarter of 2025. And two consecutive contractions means that Mozambique will be heading into a technical recession. So turning things around, not likely in the near future until they reach a middle ground, have a conversation, and start turning the economy around.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. We continue with the breaking news from Mozambique on the confirmation of Frelimo's Daniel Chapo as the winner of the presidential election. We're now joined by Professor Adriano Novungu. He's the director at the Center for Democracy and Human Rights in Mozambique. He joins us from Maputo. Good afternoon, Professor. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Firstly, your reaction to the council's announcement confirming Daniel Chapo the winner of the October 9 election.
So thank you very much for having me. My reaction is of disbelief. Disbelief because for what we have seen since the 9th of October until today, in terms of the electoral procedures, although the CNE, which is the National Electoral Commission, has declared Chapo as the winner, but when asked by national and international observers about the evidence of that victory, that was not there to be provided. So it is surprising also to see that the Constitutional Council has reduced a bit from 70% to 65%, but without justification, without substantiating that change of results. In reality, the Constitutional Council, as the ultimate organ, is not to change results, is either to validate or return the dossier for that to be changed. So you see more and more that the Constitutional Council is part of the daily procedures of electoral tabulation, which is not its mandate. So I'm in disbelief to see. In disbelief also because it is obvious that this election was not credible, and not being credible, people have been hoping that the Constitutional Council would bring all parties together to find a platform that enabled Mozambique to return to peace and stability, which it could mean learning from South Africa, for instance, that the ANC is working with other political parties as form of a national unity government, which is working perfectly well for South Africans. So that was the hope. But unfortunately, Mozambique has always been governed by Frelimo in an exclusionary, sum zero game type of politics.
I want to take you back to your statement around the revision downwards of the number of votes that were garnered by Daniel Chapo. You say that given that they've decided to revise his votes downwards, then probably what should have happened today, or the announcement should have been perhaps to go and have another revote at this point, where they go back to the polls?
The Constitutional Council, as per mandate, it checks whether the results are valid or not, whether there's been fraud or not. The president today, she said a very concerning statement. She said the following, that elections will only be nullified if materially the fraud is enough to change the results. It should never be like that. Election is it valid or is it fraudulent? So the election was fraudulent. You cannot estimate to say it was 2%, 3%, 5% fraudulent. It is fraud, it's fraud. Vote, it's one man, one vote. It's a universal right of the women and the men of our country, whose vote is to be thrown away as part of that.
But Professor, there are those
component.
who say that there would be a percentage of discrepancies that would be negligible and would allow for perhaps whatever the outcome is to stand in most instances. And I don't necessarily mean with fraud, but just discrepancies in general, that there would be a percentage which then in that instance would be viewed as negligible and allow, as I stated, for those, whatever the outcome was, to stand.
Of course, but when you change 6% from the original results sent by the National Electoral Commission, you changed 6% from the winning candidate down, and you cannot generate a convincing evidence of how you arrived at that percentage. This is number one. Second, before that, international observers, they called for the national electoral institutions to generate the tally sheets per polling station. Make that information available for anyone willing also to do their own calculations. And you said that information is not available, which is the basis for whatever subsequent processes. So where do you get that from? All the changes we're making are based on what?
So what does this mean for the stability of the country now? Because you're there, how is the situation post that announcement?
As I'm seated here, now I can hear that tires are burning. People now, there have been people injured now. And my own team at CDD that is out live streaming, they are being told to go back by the protests because they were threatening to burn our own car. So as you can see, this is going to be a night that can be a bloodshed night. Because as we have seen in the past, people were in the streets in big numbers. They were confronting the police, and the police were shooting to kill. So even considering that Mozambique's election, they have since been leading to post-election violence. But this violence this time, it's unprecedented. It's unprecedented also because it is centered in the urban areas, mainly Maputo, which we never, it's first time to see Maputo rebelling the way it's doing. So,
and has impacted the economy significantly. And I mean, I just saw reports indicating that the GDP growth for the country will be revised downwards. So a continuation would further harm the economy. So what can government do in this point to arrest this problem?
The mission is Herculean. Frelimo has done all this because they control the institutions of governance, of democracy. So they are keeping the status quo using fraud. But when it comes to governance, Mozambique is already at its biggest socio-economic crisis ever. Remember, Mozambique was projected to be by now a lower middle income country.
Yeah.
But in 10 years, it went down to become the fifth most impoverished country in the world. That means millions of people pushed to poverty, including the then emerging middle class that was swept away by this crisis. And the fiscal distress in Mozambique is such that there won't be magics. Mozambique is in a crisis. In a context like this, you expected the institutions to come together to mobilize people to the center through a national unit government, because the challenge ahead to rescue the country from its biggest crisis ever, it's an Herculean mission. And Frelimo, Chapo, they don't have the instruments to put the country back.
And Professor, the fiscal distress not only affects just Mozambicans, but also the SADC region, because that's why we have the situation of migration across the board.
Indeed, but Mozambique is different. Mozambique is fragile. Mozambique's economy is fragile. The state in Mozambique is fragile. Though the region is also grappling with the same situation, but in Mozambique, it cannot pay salaries to civil servants, cannot pay salaries to the police, cannot pay salaries to the army, cannot pay salaries to the teachers. So when you cannot pay salaries for the foundations of the state, then you have no margin of easily rescuing the country from that crisis. The region is different. And with the crisis that we see now, resulting of the post-election violence, this will push the country back to the levels of Haiti. So Mozambique is risking to be the Haiti of SADC region.
Professor, what a worrying picture you paint there. Hopefully the SADC region itself will stand up and try and assist to ensure at the very least that there's no bloodshed post this announcement. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That's Professor Adriano Novunga. He's the director at the Center for Democracy and Human Rights in Mozambique.
Yeah, so we're going to stay with that story because we understand that fresh protests have erupted in Mozambique. This is after the Constitutional Council, which is, of course, the country's highest court, confirmed Frelimo as the winner of that disputed October election. We are joined now by Estacio Valoy, who is a Mozambican journalist speaking to us from Pemba in Mozambique. Mr. Valoy, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. There's so much to get through, and I think if you'll allow me the benefit of going through the chronology, I suppose, of the day, right? And starting with the expectations that certainly was being shared by many, the voices that you were hearing this morning in the run-up to that declaration by the Constitutional Council, what a lot of people were wanting that pronouncement to be.
Yes, good evening. In fact, the expectation of many of the people which have been or are still backing the candidate of Podemos, Venancio Mondlane, the expectation was really frustrated by the announcement of the Constitutional Council, as you just said. And in this moment, the situation, it's really worse. And Turbo 8 has, as Venancio president did announce before, is already was activated by Lucia Rebel, the president of Constitutional Council. At this moment, Mozambique is on fire. Several infrastructure from government have been burning down, and we have bank agents as well, which were burning down. We have many blockades around Mozambique street or roads. Example, we look to Maputo, the road which goes to the airport's complete blockade. In Mashaka neighborhood, we have a roads blockade. We have a bus which was burned down. We do have a police vehicle was also burnt down. We have a police shooting tear gas against demonstrators. So the situation is worse. And as Venancio Mondlane did his announcement about activating the mood tube 8. This is what it's happened now. And there's no sign of having the people giving up or reducing the mood. People are frustrated. They still scream on the street that they want Frelimo part outside, and that the results announced by the Mozambique Constitutional Council are not fair. And if we look, example, the Constitutional Council somehow end up overtaking the power of the Mozambican National Commission election, because at the beginning, the result was 70% for Daniel Chapo, the candidate of Frelimo Party presidential, and 20 to Venancio. And this noon, after the announcement, we had the result about 65.5% to Daniel Chapo and 20% to Venancio, and the other 5% was split among the other Mozambican part. So the situation is still worse, and according to what the people are demonstrating at this moment in the Mozambican roads, start from Maputo all the way up north, by not only burning tires, the now banning institution is different than what happened before, because people were mainly have roads or blockades and banning tires. Now they're banning institutions, as I say. In Masia example, the house of the municipal president of the council was partial, destroyed the wall, and one of the cars was taken. So this is more or less the scenario which we are living now in Mozambique. And as I was saying, there's no sign of people retreating about what they've been fighting for justice, electoral justice, economic situation, and material justice.
Yeah.
So this is the situation which we are living now in Mozambique.
Well, there certainly was, in the run-up to the pronouncement by the Constitutional Council, some sort of expectation that if this is the result that came up, that there would be some sense of protest. And now I'm keen to hear if we actually have heard from Frelimo leadership, for instance, on these particular protests that have been sparked today, and from Venancio Mondlane, who we know over recent weeks has been very outspoken around, encouraging the protesters to take to the streets.
Yes, in fact, the Tube 8 was mainly activated after the announcement of the Constitutional Council, and the people are on the streets. We can see in some places people just set up tables in the middle of the road. In some places, they even digging the roads so no car can pass. If we look, example, to some of the footage, Katembe, we only see flames, all dark smoke coming from far away. If you look to Katembe from Maputo, you only see dark smoke. What means people are burning tires. I don't know what else they're burning, example, in Katem, but the fact is that, as I was saying, they're not only burning tires, they're burning government institutions. One of the courts in Mashaken was also taken and burned down by the protesters. So the level of demonstration did escalate. I could even say that it escalate 50% than what we've been seeing during all this almost 2 months, or since the 21st October.
I'm just going to repeat the question. Have we heard anything today from Frelimo leadership, Daniel Chapo, for instance, on these protests, so speaking directly to those protesters, or even Venancio Mondlane to those protesters?
I heard nothing about Daniel Chapo. I'm aware that I think was at noon when Venancio Mondlane came in one of his live to emphasize about people going to the road and demonstrate.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about here. I mean, how long do you think that these protests could possibly last, and the real sort of impact that you think that this have on long-term stability of Mozambique, and what the next step is for opposition parties that continue to contest that election result despite the proclamation by the Constitutional Council?
Indeed, all the parts are protesting. It's not only Podemos or Venancio or the Mozambican people, but the party example, MDM, I was looking to the council or the mayor of Beira, which was also protesting somehow about the results which were announced by the Constitutional Council, and about how long this will take. The only thing I can tell you that this will continue for, I cannot say that a week, but this will continue until we come to a stage where all the demands of the Mozambican people are met. If these demands are not met, all the protesters will keep going to the road. And this protest until now did result somehow. We did not have a coup when we were talking about demonstration.
Yeah.
But it's also open. It's open if we talk about the scenario in terms of a military coup. So if we talk about economical issues, this is not something what is in the mind of the people in this moment. The main thing what is the people's mind is the electoral justice, social and economic justice. So this demonstration will continue and might even take a month or more. But what I can say is that this demonstration will continue.
Yeah, well, let's leave it there. Stasio Avaloy there speaking to us, of course, from Pemba in Mozambique. He's a journalist giving us the latest in his own words. He says what it looks like from his perspective is that Mozambique is burning. You've got the burning down of infrastructure belonging to government officials and critical infrastructure, as well as buses and vehicles being burnt down, tires being burnt down, saying that as he looks towards this particular town from the distance, all you see is black smoke.
A small number of Mozambican nationals crossing the border.
I'm coming from Cape Town before yesterday, so I was rushing on the road, trying all my best I must reach the border in time because I hear our president will be close the border today. But unfortunately, I'm so happy with the SABC because their job is very good and it's very clean. The road is very clean.
The traffic of trucks has been reduced significantly on the N4 towards the Lebombo border gate. And the truck drivers on the queue are not eager to cross into Mozambique. They claim some of them have already been attacked in that country.
I was supposed to go into Maputo, but now I will stand here at the queue until everything becomes okay. I won't cross because I'm scared. One other driver from Shosholoza, they attacked him with the stones. They broke his trucks. So I won't cross. I will stand there until everything becomes okay.
This truck driver, who wishes to be anonymous, is also scared.
No, at the meantime, I'm scared because they said the people are dangerous inside. So I don't know what's going on that side. So I will wait here until maybe they tell me that I must cross. Until maybe I say that the border is open, then I will stay here.
These Mozambican nationals are trying to cross the border illegally. And within minutes, they were arrested. The Border Management Authority says it is arresting hundreds daily since the introduction of drones on the borderline, and says public order police are on standby for any eventuality in that country.
We do have a strong contingent of the border guards together with members of the SANDF, members of the SAPS that are here to be able to protect the port infrastructure as well as the workers or the people that are within the port precinct. However, we are also ready to implement our option 2 in case the Mozambicans are to advise us to stop the processing. We will be able to divert the travelers from here in Libombo to Mananga port of entry, which is 60 kilometers away from this particular port, whereby the travelers will enter into Eswatini and be able to travel just about 100 kilometers to be able to enter Mozambique via Mahasha port of entry.
Security is tight at the border. Dumela Macho, SABC News, Komati Port.
People traveling between Mozambique and South Africa through the Libombo border post are experiencing delays again after incidents of violence were reported on the Mozambican side of the border. Gunshots coming from the Mozambican side were heard earlier, and some injured people were seen being taken to South Africa for treatment after they were allegedly shot by security forces. Newsroom Africa's Mweli Masilela is following that story for us. Let us go there live now. Good evening to you, Mweli. It seemed that there was a little bit of reprieve, a little bit of relief, but we're back to square one again.
Yes, Masa, that incident that happened at around 4 p.m. when we arrived here, where there was a shooting on the Mozambican side of the border, has affected the movement of traffic here, but at least there is some movement compared to when we came after 4 p.m. And you'll know that since yesterday and early this morning, there was actually more movement here at the Libombo border post, both on the side of the trucks as well as the light motor vehicles. But then things changed after 4 p.m. As you can see just behind me, there's quite a number of trucks that are coming through, even though they are moving a bit slow. So what happened is that the people who actually talked to us after 4 p.m. when that incident happened told us that security forces shot at people who were attending a funeral of someone who is said to be a journalist who was shot allegedly by the security forces in Mozambique. And then after that incident, we told there was a clash between the protesters as well as the police. But on this side, you can see when you look at the light motor vehicles that they are, at the present moment, there's quite a traffic jam, mainly because of what happened. But we know that at the present moment, there is movement. The officials, both on the South African side and the Mozambican side, have started clearing both the trucks as well as the light motor vehicles. But in terms of what can be expected going forward, the people who are supporting the Podemos presidential candidate, that is Venancio Mondlane, who is considered to be the person leading this particular protest, they're saying that they are not going to back down because they believe that the current government in Mozambique is not taking care of their needs. They are alleging that there is a lot of corruption which has pushed people to hunger. You will remember even during the voting process where some of the Mozambicans were voting in South Africa, it was more than 60,000 that were registered to vote in South Africa. When we spoke to them, they said that they want change because there are no jobs in Mozambique, and when you talk even about those who are working, there is very little that they are paying them. So they actually want this Venancio Mondlane, who is the Podemos party candidate, to take over because they believe that he has won. But this protests that are continuing to go on, they've got a huge negative impact not only in Mozambique but also in South Africa. But in Mozambique, we are told at the present moment that there's a lot of destruction of government infrastructure, Masa, as well as private infrastructure, which many believe that it will take the country back. But those who are actually supporting the move for change are saying that it is worth it. They are not going to back down. They are prepared to die. That's what some of those protesters told us on the South African side. Actually, those are the people who were carrying a Mozambican that was allegedly shot by the security forces after 4 p.m. when we arrived here. They even showed us some of the graphic videos and pictures of people who were shot at that particular time, and they told us that they can confirm from their side that 2 people were shot dead. So officially from the side of Mozambique, it's been very difficult to get the numbers in terms of some of the people who've been killed there. But the last time we checked, the official figures was over 100 people who have died since this protest started after those results of the elections in Mozambique were announced. But we will wait and see if things indeed improve. As you can see, there's a long queue, Masa, at the present moment. And normally during this time, you'll have such queues as many people are living for Mozambique, because most of the Mozambican people, some of them work at the mines and others also working in different institutions in South Africa. So now they are saying that whatever the situation at home, they've worked, they want to go back home and enjoy the festive season. So we are hoping that at least tomorrow we will be able to get an update as to what is happening, but the situation doesn't look normal at all after what happened at around 4 p.m. today, Masa.
And Willie, while the situation doesn't look normal at all yet, just to be clear as well, so the operations were suspended after that shooting incident occurred around 4 p.m. this afternoon, but you're saying that operations are now have resumed. It is a bit slow, but there is movement, so it's no longer suspended.
Yes, Masa, because this is something that has been happening over and ever again. That is why when we spoke to General David Chilembe, who is actually the Deputy Commissioner responsible for operations at the BMA, he said that he's not happy with the language whereby people say that the border is closed or temporarily closed. They are saying that they actually just suspend those operations after being advised by their counterparts in Mozambique. But the truth of the matter, whether we are not agreeing in terms of that terminology, the truth of the matter is that there's been disruptions in terms of operations at the border post every now and then, and it has been confirmed by themselves as the Border Management Authority and by people who've been traveling between the two countries whom we've spoken to. And this is something that many people are saying that it might worsen as we get closer to the Christmas or the Christmas Eve, as well as Christmas Day and the New Year. And remember, many people actually love Mozambique because there's quite a number of tourist destinations there. Many South Africans travel to the neighboring country. As you will know, that there's no beach here in Mpumalanga. So even some of people of this province prefer to travel to Mozambique to explore some of those destinations. But many are skeptical at the present moment because they have been advised every now and then, Masa, to say that they must consider cancelling those trips to Mozambique. Some have taken heed of that advice, but some, as we arrived here, they're saying no. We're told that the border is now operational, so there's no reason that we will stop going to Mozambique. So they are continuing with their destinations. But of course, highlighting, Masa, that they do have those fears. They are not sure as to what is going to happen that side of the border because they've heard that there are those violent protests happening, as we have seen now, people being injured. So they might be caught in that crossfire. So that's what is happening at the present moment. And some people are even saying that something worse is coming, especially on Monday, because there's the leader of the presidential candidate of Podemos has actually indicated that people must lay low now a bit, but come Monday, they will then take the protest to another stage, which people are still waiting to see as to what is it that will exactly happen at that point in time, Mas.
Willie Masilela, thank you so much for that update coming to us live from the Lebombo border post.